All right, everybody, welcome to the Hockey Cards Gongshow podcast. I am Josh. As always, am joined by Troy. Hey, Troy, what's up, man?
Not a lot. I'm actually in a really good mood, so I'm excited to get going on this show.
That is good. So I do have to mention, Troy, I did get a bird came and whispered something to me today.
Uh-oh.
I hear it's your birthday.
Oh, it is. Yes, it is. Unfortunately, yes, it's my birthday. Another trip around the sun.
Well, happy birthday, Troy. We'll have, I'm sure, everyone tomorrow when they listen to the podcast or next week will wish you a happy birthday as well.
Yeah.
You did have to hesitate for a second.
Well, I was just saying, is it really my birthday? Like, maybe I'm just saying it's my birthday, but it was actually like a month ago.
Are you saying we're in the metaverse now or something like that? What's going on?
No, I'm just being silly. Yes, it's my birthday. Thank you for the well wishes. No one has to tell me happy birthday. It's fine. I know I'm old.
So what did you do for your birthday?
Went to work. That's about it. Went to work, came home after the podcast, gonna get some dinner, and that's about it. Not a lot.
There we go. Podcasting for your birthday.
Yep, podcasting for my birthday.
What a way to spend it. Well, again, happy birthday to you. One other piece of news real quick is I was on the Cardboard Coaches podcast this week that I think went live this past Monday. So if anyone wants to check that out, shout out to Coach Co and Sports Card Cartel. They were very nice, and it was terrifying, Troy, being on somebody else's podcast. I'll tell you that much. But I survived, I think.
Yeah, I listened to the whole episode. It was really good. You did a fantastic job, and I actually learned stuff listening to it. So the hosts were great. They asked really good questions, really good discussion. So I think it was a great show, great feedback. Good job.
Yeah, I could listen to about 10 minutes of it before I couldn't take it anymore. I always used to wonder when you would see like a movie star or someone like that on the late night shows, and they would say that they can't watch their movies or TV shows they're in. And I was curious as to, I always thought, boy, that's kind of strange, but now I totally get it. It was pretty brutal to listen to myself. So hopefully at least you liked it. So I have one fan. Aww.
Yep. Oh, sweet.
All right. Well, welcome everyone. If it's, you've been with us before, welcome back. If this is your first time listening to us, we hope you enjoyed the show. It's a hockey card focused show, obviously, and our mission and hope is to give you guys some information to make you smarter and better collectors, investors, flippers, however you happen to participate in the hobby. With that being said, Troy, why don't you give us the game plan?
Sure. On today's show, we will begin with a look at The Athletic's recent article on the top 50 NHL prospects under the age of 23. Then we take a look at tracking the offseason dip in the hockey card values. Next, it's on to hobby news and some thoughts on the national and our FOMO that we experienced. We then continue our Mount Rushmore discussion, and this time we are looking at the Mount Rushmore of defensemen. Finally, we end the show with new product release news and our personal pickups and or sales.
Okay, let's get right into it. So the first thing that we wanted to talk about today is an Athletic, pretty long article that was published with the top 50 prospects under 23. And Troy, when I proposed this, I do admit that I hemmed and hawed quite a bit on whether or not this was good for the show, whether it was appropriate. And we'll get to a second what tipped me over the edge, so to speak. But essentially what this is, it's an article, like I said, published by The Athletic. Writer named Scott Wheeler wrote the article. He covers the National Hockey League and typically the draft and prospects. In addition to writing for The Athletic, he's also written for the Toronto Star, so he seems to have pretty good credentials. To me, what drew me into the list initially was that it covers NHL prospects that are 23 and under that, and here's kind of the key with this, that have either signed an NHL contract or have been drafted, right? So this is a prospect list where you're not going to have Connor Bedard because he hasn't been drafted yet and obviously hasn't signed a contract. And it's not so much, we're not going to go through the list 1 through 50 because that would be, I think we'd both agree, pretty boring. But to me, what was interesting as we look at the rankings is comparing where some of the players fell, I guess, compared with each other. And so those are some of the things we wanted to point out. If you want to see the whole list, you can go to The Athletic. It is a subscription, so you have to have a subscription. But like I said, we're not going to go through the whole thing. Okay, so I started my preamble here by saying that there's one thing that really sucked me into this, and it was as Wheeler was laying out the sort of the criteria he uses and how this list has shaken out in the past. He did mention that on last year's top 50 list, so top 50 prospects, 23 and under, the list last year included the following names. Okay, you ready, Troy?
I'm ready.
Cole Caulfield, Trevor Zegras, Lucas Raymond, Moritz Seider, Newhook, Matt Boldy, Jamie Drysdale, Anton Lindell, Cole Sillinger, Arthur Kaliev, Philip Tomasino, and Connor McMichael, and Bowen Byram, Vasily Podkolzin, and a couple others, right? And so it really hit me at that point that while I think a lot of the names that we're going to talk about over the next few minutes are probably names that maybe some haven't even heard before. And I think that's the key takeaway, is for all of us to start to get to know these players, because if the list this year follows suit with last year's list, a lot of these guys that we're going to talk about over the next few minutes are going to end up being some of the big chases next year for young guns. I mean, again, going back to last year's list, it's sort of the who's who of 2021, 22 young guns.
Yeah, from a card perspective, that's actually what sold me to when you brought up this list. At first, I was like, well, why would we look at that? There's enough hockey just focused podcasts, not on cards, that would probably do that. But once you start looking at the names and then realize, oh, guess what? These are probably the young guns that are be coming out either next year or in a couple of years. Let's leave a little reference on the names so that these people have heard them.
And I think one of our caveats, of course, that I know we've mentioned before is we're not like diehard hockey prospect guys. We're not going to profess to be experts at the game or skills, abilities, upside, downside of any of these players. We just took some notes and then tried to make some hockey card comparisons. Okay, I'll just start at the top. Number one on the list that he had was Owen Powers. He's the big 6'6" Sabres defenseman. He was the number one pick, not in this year's draft, but the draft before, right?
Good question. I think so. I'd have to look it up, but I think so off the top of my head.
Okay. Well, maybe he was the number one pick. So he joined the Sabres at the end of last season, played in 8 games, had 3 points. I think the keynote here is not only did Scott Wheeler, who is one source and definitely one opinion, have him ranked number one, but he should be, it's likely he'll be a regular with the Sabres next year. And one of the things he said that was interesting is the potential pairing as a defenseman with Rasmus Dahlin, another young, great prospect for the Sabres, and that could be a great pair moving forward. So, again, not much to say, I think, from us, other than he fell number one on the list. He had a little bit of experience at the end of last season and might be someone to watch next year.
Yeah, and he was the number one overall pick in last year's draft.
Okay.
Confirmed.
Confirmed. The next guy on the list, falling at number 2, was Luke Hughes. He was the 4th pick last year by the Devils. An interesting point that Scott Wheeler made in his article or ranking here is he said, and I'm sort of paraphrasing, but looking for the next Cale Makar, ? Luke Hughes is the closest thing outside the NHL. So to any hockey fan and hockey card collector, that's going to perk your interest right away, as we've all basically become Makar obsessed over the past year. And so that was interesting point number one for me on Luke Hughes. The other thing is he's the brother of Jack and Quinn Hughes. What a hockey family.
Yeah, that is crazy. It's reminding me like Stastny brothers, and they had all them, or the Sutter brothers, all them that played in the NHL. And then another thing, you might have got to this, but he's going to play in Michigan. Owen Powers was Michigan. Michigan's going to be a theme you're going to see in this list.
Hurts our soul a little bit as Golden Gophers here in Minnesota. But yeah. And you did mention he's going to go to Michigan, so to me that means he's a little ways away at least from the NHL, and don't expect to see him in the fall. But good name to remember. And then going back to the hockey card aspect, hype, as we know, right, drives a lot of prices, drives a lot of chases. Just being the brother of Jack and Quinn Hughes will probably make interest in his cards pretty strong out of the gate, I would imagine.
Yeah, I'm already imagining the triple autographed card they're going to eventually make with all the brothers if he makes the NHL.
Okay, so that was one was Owen Powers, number 2 is Luke Hughes, and then the 3, 4, and 5 were guys we talked about quite a bit as we were looking or doing our coverage for the 2022 draft. So 3 was Shane Wright, 4 was Simon Nemec, and then 5 is Logan Cooley. The only thing to me that stands out about those guys on this particular ranking is both Powers and Hughes came ahead of them. So according to this draft expert, not as good as those guys. But, again, another chip on the shoulder for Shane Wright, Troy.
I know, I'm telling you, I just cannot wait for the Shane Wright tour. Or I'm trying to be PC when I say this, the Shane Wright
Revenge tour.
Yeah, revenge tour. I'm going to make you regret that you didn't pick me number 1 Montreal tour.
Skipping to number 6, Troy, I'll let you take this one because you did I don't even know how to pronounce his name.
Yeah, it's Matty Beniers, I think. He's another University of Michigan product. So now we've mentioned Owen Powers, Luke Hughes, and now Matty Beniers. So Michigan, must be doing something right. If I remember right, I think he might be starting at Michigan. I can't remember off the top of my head. Oh, no, he was at Michigan. That's right, he was at Michigan because he played in the NHL. He played 10 games with the Kraken. Obviously, he's got a little NHL experience. Highly skilled, can make plays all over the ice. Big, physical, uses his physicality to create offense. So I think he's going to be a great player. I was just it's really interesting to see the University of Michigan name pop up again and again. Now, if you saw the story today about the University of Michigan, who knows if that will continue with that stuff. We might touch on that in a little bit. I don't know if we will, but another big guy to keep a lookout for.
Yeah, and interesting too, another Kraken prospect.
Yeah.
So I think there's going to be a lot of interest in kind of the first 1 or 2 big rookies that, whether it's Shane Wright or Matty Beniers or somebody else, a lot of collector interest to get that first big Kraken rookie. So it'll be, to me, I'll be looking out and paying attention to that.
Yeah, and Beniers actually played well in his 10 games. I mean, 3 goals, 6 assists. That's pretty good for just your first 10 games.
Like I said, we're not going to mention all these guys. We're going to skip from here from number 6 to number 8. And number 8 is the first player that actually has a Young Gun card, and it's Cole Perfetti. Now, this might be sort of a placeholder for everyone, because what I think gets most interesting about this is who he's ahead of, because there are other players on this list, and in particular, a really big one, that have already their rookie cards or Young Gun cards out. He's obviously, like I just said, he's the highest current player on this ranking. His Young Gun currently sells for about $15.50 raw. The interesting thing to me, and as I was reading Wheeler's article, is that he really said for Perfetti to achieve his potential, that in his opinion, it's up to the Jets to start to pair him with better line mates and have people that can help him be successful. So I don't know if that was an issue last year or what.
You could say that about anyone, really. Anyone.
Sure.
Give me good line mates so I can develop and be better.
Okay, so we're going to then skip from number 8 to number 10, and that's where we have this year's number 1 pick, Yurov Slavkovsky. Right, so according to Wheeler, in his ranking of top 50 prospects under 23, the number 1 pick in the 2022 NHL draft comes at number 10. To me, I don't think that's like a massive slight, because the kid's 18 years old.
Yeah.
Right, and some of these people he's being compared to are 3-4 years or more older. Because he's so young too, I don't know. I looked a little bit, Troy, and I couldn't find anything as far as when he's expected to make his debut. I know he signed a 2-way or entry-level contract. I would assume that he may not start in the NHL right away.
I would doubt he starts in the NHL. I mean, I hope he makes the NHL this year or this upcoming season, but let's be honest, there's a lot of development. He's super young. These teams are usually pretty smart on how they handle this stuff, so they'll want to see some growth and some development before they throw him right in. He's not like he's a 22-year-old college kid just graduated or leaving college after 2 or 3 years and has a little higher level experience. So it'll be really interesting. I don't think he'll play this year, but I hope he does.
Okay, so now for me, this is where the list gets really fun and interesting because we've talked about a lot of people and names that, like we started, right? Most people probably haven't heard a ton about or have really never seen play. So these are the Owen Powers, Luke Hughes, right? Logan Cooley's, Yurov Slavkovsky's, all ahead of this guy, number 13, Mason McTavish. One of the biggest chases in Series 2 Young Guns. What's interesting, though, when you look into McTavish, and I think this can go a little bit into the hockey card discussion, is a lot of his pricing is driven by hype because he only played in 9 games and had 2 goals and an assist.
Yeah, McTavish, it's all hype and just how he is built and what you see pieces of it. Even I think Wheeler mentioned in his article, he's highly talented. He's obviously, he was a talented goal scorer and he plays a very physical game. Wheeler mentioned, people don't like going in the corner with him because he'll bump you and grind you and take the puck or use his body to his advantage if he has the puck and get around you. But he also mentioned some of the stuff, why there's this hype, he's not as polished as a lot of the prospects that he mentioned above him. So there's still some work to be done. But he has all the tools to become like a top power forward, if you want to use that term.
Okay, now the big one. So we had McTavish at 13. We'll skip 14, and coming in 15 in the top 50 NHL prospects under 23 is none other than Quinton Byfield.
Yeah, that was interesting.
The disrespect is reverberating across the country right now.
Yeah, I don't know if it's disrespect. I mean, let me say this: Wheeler, he's a really good writer, really good, knowledgeable about hockey. So he lays out some of the stuff in the article, but I don't know if it's that big a surprise. I mean, it's like Byfield blew away the world with his debut or anything. So still development to be had.
That's what Wheeler definitely went into in the article. And it actually was useful for me as a collector and investor in saying that for the number 2 overall pick to be at 15 on its face value is not the best. But what was unique for Byfield is his really ascension into the NHL coincided with the pandemic and the bubble and the shortened season. And so I think mainly brought up the question is that he had a set of circumstances to deal with that were pretty extraordinary and did not have the smoothest landing onto the Kings. But what that'll do, of course, is put pressure on him, I think, to perform. Here's where I want to make, I think, a larger point, Troy, and get your opinion on this too. I think the value, just us and really kind of writing the show here and having the information to talk about, it really illuminated for me that when we're spending money on some of these players and investing into them, it really is in our best interest to learn about them, which I think may sound weird, but Quinton Byfield is everyone chases him. It's $50 for $40 for one of his young guns on eBay, or in breaks, people are going crazy, that sort of thing. And I realized I really knew, other than that he was one of the biggest chases, I didn't know much about him.
Yeah, and for sure, it's a big chase, but I kind of equate this. I was trying to think of prospecting in baseball, but prospecting in baseball, you have hundreds upon hundreds of guys that get drafted in that MLB draft. Where hockey, it's a lot smaller pool, and I think once some of those guys get some hype around them, you can see why everyone gravitates toward them, and if they have some good news behind them, like Byfield kind of did coming out, but the more you read into it and see his play, and you can look at back when he was on Team Canada, he had a good couple years there, but he also had a down year with them one time. So it definitely makes sense to do your research. But again, the hype machine is real with these hockey players and the young guns.
Absolutely. And my key takeaway on Byfield in particular is that so far his on-ice performance has not met expectations. And so his value and price is still largely being driven by hype. So it's going to be big the first month or so of the season, how he performs or where he starts. I guess I'm not even sure he'll start in the NHL. But if he struggles out of the gate, we might see him crash a little bit. Or he might be like Lafreniere and get a lot of rope from a collector perspective too.
Yeah.
I guess we'll just have to wait and find out.
Yeah, I mean, it's interesting because he did play 40 games with the where was it, 40? I think it was. I'm looking at it right now, 46 total after over 2 years. So he's got some experience, but yeah, it'll be interesting. Plus, you got to remember, 19 years old. That's the thing. I think I forget about that all the time. I don't know if it was like this, in the 60s and 70s, but these kids are so young coming into the league and playing that, guess what? They're still developing. They're still growing. They might grow a couple inches. There's still stuff going on with them that, they can get better. So I think that's one of those, it's that age curve. It's one of those things to realize when we talk about them, which I kind of forget sometimes.
Okay, so there's two more players we want to mention really quickly. The first is Marco Rossi, and honestly, we're doing it just to be wild homers, pretty much. He is our top prospect. If you look at a lot of the prospect rankings, the Wild actually are number one from an overall prospect standpoint, so that's pretty cool for us. I think the only really hockey note there is I think the Wild, with the absence of Fiala and the hole that creates in the lineup, could count on him more than you would expect from a player getting their first real NHL time of significance to help fill that hole. And he could be one of the bigger young guns if he gets off to a hot start. So it might not just be Kaprizov Wild chases. It could be Marco Rossi to Troy.
Especially with how hamstrung the Wild are going to be with the Parise and Suter buyouts. I think they really need Marco Rossi to kind of step up.
Okay, and then the last player, this will be a little weird, guys, at first, but you're just going to have to trust me on this one. So coming in at number 24 is William Eklund from the Sharks. The only thing that I want to mention is remember that he was 24 on the top 50 prospects under 23, because it's going to be relevant later on the show when we're talking about new product releases. So make a mental note, William Eklund at 24. All right, Troy, I think that was a pretty comprehensive look at the list. Anything else stand out to you about these prospects or what we could expect from a hockey card perspective next year, or did we cover all our bases?
No, I think we covered most of the big stuff. But I will say, if this piqued your interest and you have a subscription to The Athletic, read the article. It's really good. The Athletic hockey writers, they're all pretty fantastic and go into a lot of detail. And even if you like analytic stuff, they have writers that go into a lot of analytic stuff too. But no, I think it's a great article. I think we covered just the high points.
Okay, so let's roll on to our next topic, which is tracking the off-season dip. If you follow our Instagram, and if you don't, please follow us at hockey_cards_Gongshow. You'll have noticed that we've had a series of posts over the last week that we're aiming to quantify the mysterious off-season market dip that really any seasoned or experienced collector would talk about. So we've always kind of known that it exists, but I think, Troy, for one of the things that for me and Troy that was really we were interested in is, to what extent does it exist? Is it mainly perception, or is there a reality? Is the dip significant? And so we began a series where we're starting to look at some of the data and spend time analyzing what happens to a hockey card's prices as you go from the end of the season in through the off season and then ultimately to the start of the following season. So we've done two parts in this series that I want to mention real quick. The first is we looked at rookies both for 2020 and 2019. And we chose to start off by looking at the 2021 offseason. So this would have been last offseason. It's really hard to go back much further than that, because then you have all the pandemic stuff where we have shortened seasons, we had people on lockdown, we have bubbles, and we're not smart enough to extract all those variables from the equation. So we thought it was a decent start to look at just the last offseason. So if you saw the post, we took the most notable 2020 rookies. I think there was 7 of them, with Kaprizov, Cozens, Ottinger, Lafreniere, Robertson, Norris, those kind of people. And what we found is there is a dip. That is definitely certain. And most cards lost anywhere. I'm looking at the list right now, Troy. You had Kaprizov, who at the end of the season was for his raw 2020 Young Guns was $125. It dipped down to 42 in the middle of September on the 16th of 2021, and then was back up to 92 by the start of the following season. Right. And that's a pretty significant drop.
Mm-hmm.
All the others weren't, and I'm not going to sit and read through them all. You can definitely check it out on our Instagram. And so at least for this group of 7 players, all had a dip. All were significant in the 30-40% plus range, and everybody rebounded. The other thing that was interesting to me, Troy, when looking at the 2020 rookies was they all, for the most part, their dip occurred within a similar window. Kaprizov in this case was actually the exception, but for the other 6, it was between the middle of July and the end of August, which kind of makes sense, right? Because that's sort of the deadest period of the off season. And so again, one data point, one interesting view. From there, we looked at the 2019 rookies. So this would be Makar, Suzuki, Shesterkin, Jack Hughes, Quinn Hughes, and Adam Fox, right? Those are the most notable. And again, all had a similar dip. I'll give another example. Look at Cale Makar. Prices were different a year ago, so there's a note there. But if you would have bought his raw 2019 Young Gun on June 15th, so right at the end of the season there, it would have cost you about $150. It went down to $83 by the end of September, which was its low point in the offseason on September 26th, and was back up to $125 by October 15th. Again, to see the rest of them, go to our Instagram, check it out. But you had the same pattern almost as the 2020 rookies. The only difference, though, was if you look at when the dip occurred, where, as we mentioned with the 2020 rookies, it was middle of July to the end of September. For the 2019 rookies, it was September to early October. Why? I have no clue. But that's the only difference that we could find.
Yeah, and when you did this, or we were talking about this, it's really good to see data on paper with this, because like you said, this is one of the things, seasoned collectors always say it, but I've never actually seen an analysis. Not that this was this great white paper or anything, but it is starting to put data points around this kind of off-season dip that we hear about. So that was the really, eye-opening thing to me as you looked at the data points coming up.
So we did that. We did the 2020 rookies, 2019 rookies about 3 or 4 days ago. And today, so the day we're recording here is August 2nd, we posted our first look into a veteran, more established player. And we looked at Connor McDavid in particular. By not looking at 6 or 7 from a particular class, it enabled us to go a little bit deeper into McDavid's rookie, which is his 2015 Young Guns, of course. And we looked at his raw PSA 9, BGS 9.5, and PSA 10. And again, found a dip at every level, right? So his PSA 9, if you would have bought on 6/15/21, would have cost you $1,350. By July 5th, it was down to $785. But then at the start of the season, October 15th, back up to $1,225. And again, similar dip for raw 9.5 and PSA 10. Timing right around the time of the 2020 rookies. So again, I don't know if we know enough about timing yet, but really interesting where in the title of our post was, even McDavid isn't immune to the off-season dip. So we're going to add more analysis like this over the next week or two. But one of the main reasons why I wanted to bring it up on the podcast is to give context and to talk about our goals with this project. I think we already mentioned the first one, right? We want to prove what most experienced collectors have long said, that there's an off-season dip, right? I think we're doing that, or we're well on our way with even the little bit of work we've done to this point. But beyond that, there's 2, I think, to me, really potentially beneficial outcomes to this. And that is, first of all, to help collectors not panic, Troy.
Yeah, for sure.
Right, because we should all expect our collection to take a decently hard dip over the next 6 weeks, and the sky isn't falling. The market isn't crashing. Hockey's not over. This is, I think, we can't be certain because we are not data scientists and haven't done enough analysis yet. But if and when the market does dip, it will most likely come back at the start of the season. Would you agree with that?
Yeah, just from what we've seen in the data, the small data set we've looked at, obviously, if you're a collector, you don't care. That's great. Whatever, you're just collecting to collect. But the investor and the flipper, if you see these values go down, just remember what season we're in and don't panic. It's okay. Don't panic. Things usually will come up. We'll see if we can find some examples of where they don't. But for now, deep breaths.
Yeah, and that brings us, I guess, to the next opportunity or goal. I don't know how you want to describe it. For me, it's, we've talked before, right? Off season is buying season. So I think there's a big opportunity for us ourselves to learn and to help other collectors and investors understand when the best buying opportunities might be. Along this thought, I spent some time this afternoon and tried to put McDavid's 2021, right? So the last off-season experience to the test. And it's hard to gauge right now because I don't even know, what are we, 30% through the off-season or something like that. But try to see if last year would hold true to this year a little bit. So as an example, let's say you're in the market for a 2015 McDavid Young Gun PSA 9. Remember, we talked just about a minute ago that last year it dipped 42% from where it sold at the end of the season to its lowest point in the off season. And I wanted to kind of, again, see how that compares to what's happening this year. So on June 15th of 2022, right, just a month and a half or so ago, or 2 months ago, whatever that was, it sold for around $12.50. The most recent sale on August 1st, so that would have been a couple days ago, was $9.35. So is this the low point? Who knows, right? But what I think is instructive is that it's already about 25% off of where it was on June 15th as the season was wrapping up. And obviously his season ended a little bit earlier because the Oilers didn't make the Cup Finals. So my takeaway from that, Troy, is that even at $9.35, it's probably a pretty good buy. But if you're inclined to hold out a little bit, if you're in this one example where you're hypothetically in the market for a McDavid rookie PSA 9, based on last year's experience, in the $875 to $900 range would be a great target. If you see it get to $875 or $875, it's probably a pretty good buy. And then what you're hoping for, of course, is that it holds true to last year and it rebounds again at the start of the season to the $1,300 range, and you've got, $200, $300, $400 worth of profit baked in there. So interesting stuff. We're going to keep working on it and see what we find. Who knows? We may, like I think you mentioned a minute ago, we might look at some data that tells a whole different story. And that brings me to our caveats on this, which I think for both of us is really important. Number one, at this point, the data set is very narrow.
Yes.
Right. We've looked at one off season, three small groups. We'd love to go back further, but I don't know if we're going to be able to with the whole COVID mess that we mentioned. And the biggest thing we don't want anyone to do is to take any of this as buy or sell advice. Our goal is always to present data to you guys, to give a viewpoint on it. But really our hope is that it will enable you to think for yourself and improve on any hypothesis that we might give or idea we might have with your own research, and then make the best decision for you. If we tried to give buy sell advice, I'm sure you would lose a lot of money. It would not be wise.
Yeah, like you can go back to our first episode. We're not financial advisors. We're not giving you financial advice, but we will present data and we can have opinions on that data. Like Josh just read off some opinions, but do your research, take the knowledge you're gaining and put it to use on your end and see what you think from looking at the data.
And we're big collaborators too. So as we post more, whether it's on this topic, right, the idea of the off-season dip or anything else we do, it would be amazing if anyone has, I don't know, gets the idea to do your own research or try to prove or disprove or complement or take anything we do further. That would be amazing, and just let us know, and we'll add that to the information. Like I said, our goal is, to make everyone smarter and better collectors, investors, or flippers, however you participate in the hobby. Okay, I think that's enough on that. All right, so we wanted to roll into hobby news. I think, Troy, we both had a serious dose of FOMO last week during the National. Is that a good way to describe?
Yeah, definitely. I think at the beginning you had a lot more FOMO, but as I started watching, Instagram clips or videos on YouTube or whatever you get your news from, or wherever I was watching, I started to get really bad FOMO and was sad that we weren't there.
Yeah, so it definitely stunk that we couldn't be there. On all honesty, we had no idea that this little podcast would be what it is today. Otherwise, we might have, but we also had a lot of other obligations too. So, all boring stuff, but it forced us to remain in Minnesota. We did, though, employ a number of correspondents, Gongshow correspondents, to be our eyes and ears at the show, and got contributions from a lot of people, which was amazing. And thank you to everyone that reported back to us. We really, really appreciate it. And so what I wanted to do is wrap up for maybe other people that didn't go to or haven't heard what the show experience was like. This is not our firsthand experience, of course, but this is a synopsis of what other people told us, based on their experience. Troy, I wrote these notes, so you let me know if you've heard anything different or can add any more context, I guess.
Sure.
So we heard from a number of people that there is a bit more hockey this year than in years past, which I think is a good thing. Does that compute with what you've heard too?
Yeah, most of what I heard, there was more hockey. There was generally more hockey I heard, but then I heard a couple people say they didn't think there was, or there was the same amount. But I saw more reports of there was more hockey than there has been in past years, which is good.
It wasn't a hockey takeover.
No, not by any stretch of the imagination.
I wonder if we should try to organize. This is an on-air production meeting, but wouldn't it be amazing if hockey had a big presence at the National next year?
Oh, for sure. It would
somehow,
be amazing.
Some way.
I don't know how you do it, but yeah, it'd be awesome if there was a lot more hockey.
Well, you better figure it out, because I am nominating you as vice president in charge of hockey dominating the National 2023 in Chicago. It's a long title, but you'll fit it on a business card. Don't worry.
I'll start recruiting at Toronto if we end up going there, which we are planning to do. We are planning to go to the Toronto Fall Expo.
Yeah, so we heard that there was more hockey, not a ton. Troy, in his new position, will work on that. I did hear from a lot of people that there's a lot of vintage in all sports, not just hockey, but almost more vintage in, I don't know, I've never been to a national, so I don't know if that really makes sense, but maybe some will disagree. Let us know if you do. One other thing, though, that we heard quite a bit is that there was a lot more corporate involvement. And I think this is an important point, because it's a clear indication that more and more money is coming into the space. You have, with all the big acquisitions that have happened, with Collectors Universe buying companies and Fanatics purchasing the licenses in other sports and creating the Zero Cool brand. We heard from a bunch of people that they did Clerks trading cards and Stranger Things, and the lines are just crazy, hours long to get those. Yeah. And they had, it wasn't just picnic tables or folding tables with card cases. They had legitimate trade show experiences with huge screens and giveaways, and that you can definitely tell that the hobby is getting more businessy, to use the technical term. Mm-hmm. So I think that's one thing that'll be interesting to keep following. And then the last thing that I'll mention is we heard from almost everybody and anybody that, sorry, any of our Atlantic City fans, but that How do we put this politely, Troy? That it was a dump?
Yeah, no one reached out and said, "Man, I just really hope this comes back to Atlantic City," or they just make it permanent there. Everyone, even not our quote-unquote correspondent team that was there, even if you read random posts on the internet or various bloggers on Instagram or whatever, they all were saying Atlantic City just isn't a good place to have this. It's run down. It's kind of a dumpy. Parking was atrocious. And then there was the whole Wi-Fi issue, which I think I don't know what the whole story on that was, but a lot of people said they couldn't get Wi-Fi or they had to pay some enormous amount to get Wi-Fi. But
pretty hard to comp cards you're interested in buying or selling without internet access. But
well part of me thinks, is that on purpose? Like, is that part of the gig? Like they can charge an exorbitant amount, hoping a lot of people pay. I mean, this would be the perfect place because if you want to start looking up comps, and I don't know how the mobile networks were. I never heard anything about that. People said the Wi-Fi stunk, but I never heard were the mobile networks working or were they getting all jammed or what?
I don't know. Yeah, it's a good question. Well, it's in Chicago next year. We plan to be there, and thank God it's not Atlantic City.
Yeah, huh? Chicago's nice.
So if anyone has anything else that you think is meaningful to the group and audience here or followers of the Gongshow regarding the National, please feel free to message us on any of our social channels, and we'll be happy to relay that information. Okay, so Troy, I'm looking at the timer. We're almost 44 minutes into the episode, and we have not even yet mentioned our boy Kirill.
Oh, Kirill. So... Well, I'll mention Kirill. So, as a good Minnesota fan, you expect the worst. Figured he was going to be trapped in Russia or in the gulag or whatever he was going to be doing over there. But it sounds like confirmed reports that he's arriving in the U.S. or has already arrived today. But I have yet seen a picture, so I'm still cautiously optimistic. I want photographic or video proof that he is in Minnesota at the Wild training facility before I give the complete sigh of relief. But it sounds like all things are leading towards that he's back in the States.
Yeah, I think every indication is that he's definitely good for this next season. I listened to Michael Russo, who's a Wild beat writer. He was on a local radio show and went into great detail as to what the situation is. And it sounds like, I'm not going to bore everyone with all the specific details, but it was really a work visa issue. What has been refuted is the fact that he bought a fake military ID. Mm-hmm. That has come out as not true. What the issue has been around is that it sounds like he didn't renew his work visa after the season because he was really homesick and wanted to go home and should have. And that happened to also coincide with, he was part of a military school or university in Russia where you get your military service, your mandatory military service deferred. And that also lapsed. And then with all the geopolitical stuff going on, it kind of has created a tense situation. So he does have a work visa. It is good through not only the season, but the remainder of his contract. And Michael Russo also cautioned that the story isn't over, that there is, he may not be able to go home soon, and there may be issues with his family being able to come here and see him and stuff like that. So it doesn't appear that it'll be an issue about his availability. I think if you were going to have concerns about the situation lingering, it's more about his headspace and maybe the trauma of what's happened to him over the last few weeks and how that'll affect him going into next year. But he's here.
Yeah, I'm glad he's here. It doesn't sound like a fun situation and all the stuff that was going on, but hopefully they can get some stuff figured out. He can get his head cleared and get in a good space, and then worry about hockey. Obviously, your family, all that stuff comes first. But yeah, we will see.
One of the things, though, as this whole experience was moving along, that I did notice, and I'm curious if you had the same observation, Troy, is it didn't seem like that the collector market in general overly panicked over the situation.
I did see that. It actually surprised me because I don't know if that's just me, always thinking the worst as a Minnesota fan, and everyone else has a lot cooler head than I do. But you didn't see his values fall off a cliff. They kind of held, so that was good. I mean, I'm glad. I mean, but it did surprise me a lot because I thought for sure we'd see this dip or panic or something. But I guess that was kind of the whole, you had the story and then just dead quiet for that, I don't know, 3-week, 4-week time period. And maybe there just wasn't another thing to get people panicked again.
I think we'd have to look into the data, but my anecdotal observation is that if anything, it put people more in a hold pattern.
Mm-hmm,
where if you were thinking about getting a future watch, it's like, well, maybe I'll wait 3 weeks and see what happens here before I spend $1,000 on a card for a guy who could end up in a Russian military camp. That wouldn't be great. But yeah, in general, it seems like the market was pretty cool about the whole situation. Okay, so our boy Kirill is back. Thank God. All us Minnesota fans can sleep a little bit better until the next ridiculous situation happens, probably 3 days from now.
Yeah.
Okay, so the last thing we want to mention in our hobby news segment is, I know you saw this, but I don't know if if I heard your feedback, Troy. During the National, I don't know for sure if this was official or unofficial or leaked, but a lot of photos started surfacing of a new Beckett holder. You saw that, right?
I did see those photos, and it was interesting because my first reaction was, why? I didn't think Beckett was in the need. With all the other stuff going on with that company, the last thing I thought they needed was kind of, let's redo our holder. And I saw the new pictures come out. I'm going to give credit. There is a website. It's radicards.com. It's RADICARDS.com. And they actually go into a really big analysis on this new holder, and they show how it's pretty much certain that this is the new holder. But then Beckett, I think, got so much bad publicity from people that they kind of walked it back. And we're like, no, this was just, we're giving away these big pictures of the holder. It's a crazy story.
But it's definitely a new logo because the logo on the holder is their logo. It's everywhere on their social media and website now.
Yeah, and people are sleuths, man. They found the new website. There's a new website out there that you can find the new stuff. And I put it in the show notes. Hold on, or maybe I didn't. But yeah, the people found the website it basically says this is the new Beckett, and it's got those holders on it. So it was really odd. It didn't do anything for me. Obviously, I've seen Beckett holders. Yeah, it's another thing. I think all the holders or all the grading companies, they're kind of boring at times. I wish someone could take what HGA, was that what they called? HGA was doing with the custom, like the pictures and stuff, not the grading. That company was something else atrocious on the grading. But I did like that they actually came out with kind of a new idea on the look. But yeah, slabs are slabs to me. I'm not one of those that really likes one company, so I'm only going to get cards slabbed in that company.
Well, there's a couple things that I would say about this situation, and I think I come at it from in my professional life. I've been a marketer for a long time, and so I'm naturally interested when companies make decisions like this and introduce, update or refresh their brand and the packaging that their product comes in this case, the holder. And the two things that stood out is, first of all, I totally get that there is a negative reaction. People typically react negatively to change. So the best example, and this dates us a little bit, but if you recall, as Facebook was growing, when they would make changes to the news feed or timeline, people would go bananas, and then that dies down and everyone uses the same change. Or Apple getting rid of the button on the home screen, right? People are going to react, or changing the phone jack, all those sort of changes that, the initial reaction typically is negative because people just don't like change. To me, though, what's more significant is that as I started to analyze why would Beckett do this, and particularly update their brand, is that it signifies to me that they feel that they need to draw a better connection to today's collector and maybe communicate some of the things that they're working on or improving, and that, hey, this isn't the old Beckett, this is the new Beckett. Now, I have no inside information as to what they're doing. I don't typically send cards to Beckett, and it's just pure speculation as to why you would choose to make this change now. And as you mentioned, and I've definitely seen other people talk about too, is that there seems to be a laundry list of complaints that Beckett fans and longtime customers have. And to me, if you're planning to address those complaints, it would make sense to come out with this refresh now, because it says, hey, this isn't the same old Beckett. This is the new Beckett. We want you to judge us differently going forward. But we'll see what happens. We'll see.
Yeah, I'm curious.
If and when.
Yeah, I'm curious. Does this change anyone's mind on Beckett in our community? That, you know, because we do see some people in our comments that they've talked about they like Beckett, they grade with Beckett. So I'm curious, does this do anything for any of our listeners?
Well, Beckett has a long legacy in hockey.
Yeah.
Yeah, more so than maybe some other sports. You know, it doesn't really have a great foothold or hockey does with SGC yet. PSA is PSA. That's where the most value is, but it is an important slab and brand to the hockey collector. So again, it's definitely something we'll follow. Mount Rushmore defense, Troy. Are you ready?
I am ready. I am ready to do this. I want to see who you have and who I have, and dang it, let's hope they're not the same list.
I know. I'm feeling pessimistic about that. Maybe we just think too much alike.
Well, I was thinking maybe we should have done I was trying to think of something else, like the Supreme Court justices of defensemen, because then you have, 12 or 11, I don't even know how many Supreme Court justices we have, but you have a lot more than 4.
No. It's a lot of research to come up with 4, and there's a lot of anxiety.
Yeah, if you do your work. I mean, obviously with defensemen, we're going to have probably a really obvious one that's going to be on both of our lists. But yeah, when you start doing the research, I mean, you still got to do research on them just so you kind of know what's going on.
Yeah, so I say, Troy, to maybe, hopefully, please have a little bit of suspense. I say we start with the obvious and then work our way to the left. Okay, so you go first.
Okay.
Who do you want to start with?
I'm going to start with Bobby Orr.
He's not on my list.
He's not on your list.
I'm just kidding.
Oh, my God. I was like, well, I was going to be like, maybe you're sitting there going, oh, you only played, 657 games. And I thought you were going to be edgy or something. Yes. Okay. Heart attack averted. Heart attack panic mode averted.
You were like, stop recording.
I was like, we're done. This podcast is over. You know nothing of hockey. We're done. No, I'm just kidding. So, yes, Bobby Orr.
Yes, he is Captain Obvious. He is on my list, but I'll let you run through why you're nominating Mr. Orr for the Gongshow Mount Rushmore of defensemen.
Yeah, I think just from that picture of his goal scoring where he's flying through the air, that should just debate over. But obviously, he didn't play a lot of games. He's kind of like Mike Bossy, where career was riddled by injuries. And at the end, his knees couldn't hold up. But 657 games, 270 goals, 645 assists, 915 regular season points puts him 11th for defensemen. But again, for a shortened career, the caveat with that 11th for defensemen is that every defenseman player that has more points than him played at least 403 more games than Bobby Orr. So that's like the caveat with this, when you think of his numbers with his career. However, his points per game, 1.39, which is first all time for defensemen and fifth all time for any player in the NHL. And
that's crazy.
Yeah. And I should have, before I started, just quickly, if you haven't listened to the past ones, like kind of our criteria, just real quick. We looked at stats, Stanley Cups, awards and achievements, impact to their city or team, and then relevance/hype. So that's the quick rundown. If you listen to our previous episodes, we go into a little more on the criteria.
Well, and the one quick thing I'll add to that too is about defensemen specifically. What made this particular group a little bit maybe more challenging is that there's kind of two groups of defensemen. You have offensive defensemen, or definitely fits into that group, and then your defensive defenseman, which he fits into both. Which I think why we both consider him the greatest defenseman and one of the greatest hockey players of all time.
Definitely. So to keep going, 2-time Cup, his awards and achievements, long list. Calder, a Rookie of the Year award, 8-time Norris, all consecutive, 9-time All-Star, 2-time Ross Trophy, 2-time Conn Smythe, 3 times MVP, 1-time Pearson, obviously Hall of Famer, obviously on the 100 greatest players in NHL history list that NHL.com put out. I don't know if you have any other awards and achievements that stood out to you.
There's a couple things that. Are you a big plus minus guy?
Okay, plus minus. I only use plus minus on one of mine that I selected. I've read enough analytics stuff where they've kind of tore apart plus minus and kind of have thrown it out as a useful statistic. Caveat being, I actually used it on one because it was insane. I think
it's a bad statistic until you need it.
No, it's a bad statistic until you need it, but it has some relevance. At a point in time, it's what they had. But now when you start looking at how plus minus and how if you're the best D, you're always going to be out against the top players. And plus minus has been debated back and forth, and some of the more advanced analytics people have torn it down. But let's use it. It's going to be used in our debate.
Okay, so noted, but I think he's second in career plus minus with plus 597.
Yeah, it's a huge number. I mean, that's
such an overwhelming number that whether you feel about the statistic, I think it indicates they were better when he was on the ice than when he wasn't. Another kind of this isn't really a stat, but I found this super interesting is he was inducted into the Hall of Fame in 1979 at age 31.
Yeah, that's crazy.
Which is like early prime.
Yeah.
Now and that goes back to the knee thing, and you always think of these cases like with Gale Sayers, the football player from the Bears, or if they had the modern medical technologies and what we know about orthopedic injuries, would his left knee, could they have treated it? Could it have extended his career?
From last
what
week.
could have been? Yeah. I thought that was really interesting. And then the only other, just to add a little hockey card context to it, most people probably know, but his rookie card is the 1966 Topps. What is interesting about his rookie, though, is that there's really 2 variations. Mm-hmm. There's the regular Topps and then a variation called the USA Test, which is a lot more rare. If you look at his top 2 sales ever, this is where you see both examples. So there is, Troy, one regular Topps, so not the USA Test.
Okay.
That's a BVG, so Beckett Vintage Grading.
Okay.
Pristine.
Oh, wow.
Yeah. I don't think there's even a PSA 10 of either of his cards. And that last sold in February 2021 for $276,000.
That makes sense.
Which is a lot of money, but when you compare it to the 228 that the McDavid Cup RPA just sold for, I would assume if this went for sale again, it would do a lot better than 276. I would hope so. Anyways.
Yeah, for sure.
And then of the USA Test, there's a PSA 9 that last sold for $204,000 in 2019. So again, probably would do a lot better today than what's that, 3 years ago now.
Yep.
On the more affordable side, there's a 1966. I looked at the Topps PSA 5. It has a population count of 126. There's only 342 higher. It last sold for $9,500 last October. So if you're looking to get into Bobby Orr, it's still a lot of money, about $10,000 or more, but that's probably a decent option there.
Yeah, a lot of money, but definitely getting, at least it's coming down into that attainable range. It's not so far out there that besides
it's not a house.
Yeah, the little pocket of people. I was going to say one more thing about Bobby Orr that it was one of the interesting things, or not the interesting thing. I've talked about it before, but I always look at his career and how far ahead of his time he was, where obviously he was an offensive defenseman, could score. Now that's expected almost of defensemen coming into the NHL or college, high school. Your defensemen are expected to play offense, make the rush, join the rush. And he's like, what was it? He was the only defenseman to win the scoring title, and he did it twice. So that to me just shows you 60s, how ahead of his time he truly was.
Okay, so this was an easy one. I think not a lot of debate.
No.
He is signed, sealed, and delivered Bobby Orr to the Gongshow Mount Rushmore of defensemen.
Slap him up there.
All right. Not quite as obvious, but I'd be really surprised if you didn't have the next one. And for me, that is Ray Bork.
I do have Ray Bork. He was the last one I added to my list, though. And that's
Really?
not saying, like, remember, I've said I don't go 1, 2, 3, 4. I had he was in my group of what I was looking at, but he was the last one I added. And again, this is like last week when I started looking at it more. I was like, dummy, you start reading about him and all his stats and just what he did in his career. And it's like, yes, he's on this list. He has to be.
Well, if you tried to steel man it or play devil's advocate, I guess the argument you would make is that he's just rewarded for longevity over everything else. But I don't think that's the case. That's not my opinion. But I also think that there's merit to longevity, too, being really good for a really long time.
And it's not like he didn't play. Like, he played a ton of games every year, I believe. Now, don't quote me on that. There might have been some seasons he was injured. But if I remember right, he played a lot.
He played 1,612 games, which is the 13th most in NHL history. That's over 20 seasons with the Bruins. He played a little more than a season with the Avalanche, so played 21 seasons total. Finished with 1,579 points, most ever by a defenseman. Of that, 410 goals, again, number one for NHL defenseman all time, and 1,169 assists, number one as well. Beyond that, he was a 5-time Norris Trophy winner.
Mm-hmm.
And a couple other points about the Norris Trophy that I think are really impressive, too. He was the runner-up 6 times.
Wow. So over half of his career, he was first or second for the Norris. Okay.
Yeah, and even in going back to your point, Troy, about he played good for a long time, his last season, so his 21st season, he was the runner-up as well to Nicholas Lindstrom.
That's awesome. That's really cool.
He won the Calder Trophy his rookie year, won his first Stanley Cup in his final game.
Yep, I did have that note when I put mine down. That's what a way to go. Like that's basically the dream. Go out on top. You're done.
Yep.
Great career. Won the Stanley Cup. Your last game, you won the Stanley Cup. No one can take that away.
And one of our criteria, as we mentioned, is importance to city and community. And I don't think there's even you mentioned Paul Kariya and how many people showed up to his workout.
Yeah.
So Bork leaves Boston, spends a year in Colorado, wins the Cup in his final game. 3 days later, takes it back to Boston, and 20,000 fans show up.
That's pretty amazing, especially for another. Okay, let's think about it. Boston, not the most, hostile to probably other teams coming in, and they let another guy come in with a cup from another team. However, this guy played for him for 19 years or 20 years.
Yeah.
That's pretty cool. That shows, debate over on what he meant to the city. Holy cow.
Well, then even on the Avalanche side, I thought this sort of companion anecdote to that is both the Bruins and the Avalanche retired as number 77.
I did. I had that in my notes. I knew for sure Boston did. I forgot Colorado did too. That's crazy for how short a time he was there. But
any other context you want to add about Ray Bork before I go into
one thing I did, I was reading an article, I can't remember, it was in a Colorado newspaper. I actually was reading it, and how Bork, when they brought him into Colorado, how he kind of just turned the whole culture of that locker room around. And I think that just kind of gives off the aura. And they really credit him with leading Colorado to the Cup, because they said it was kind of discombobulated before he got there. Then once they brought him in, he just kind of turned everything around and was a leader and they go on to win a Cup. So,
okay, let's talk a little bit of Ray Bork hockey cards. Looked at his 1980 OPG rookie PSA 10. Has a gigantic population of 32.
32, yeah.
It last sold not too long ago, on June 16th, for $13,800. Its high sale during the 2021 boom was in January 26th of 2021 for $23,700. So it's, I don't know, what is that? A little more than less than half of what it sold for. Boy, the more social media posts we do and preparation for the podcast, if you spent a lot of money on sports cards in January, February, or March of 2021, you're hurting.
Yeah, you're in a lot of pain.
Yeah, almost all the all-time highs come from that time period. again, on the more affordable side, so if you wanted a PSA 9 OPC, sold in May for 2,160, or even a little bit cheaper is a Topps version PSA 9 you can get for like 515. For an all-time great, that's pretty significant. That's a pretty low barrier to entry.
Yeah, I mean, I can't really refute that or any more context.
So we have Orr and Bork. I don't think anything is earth-shattering there. Now, maybe, potentially, hopefully, I don't know, this could get interesting.
Yeah, so we'll see here. I'm curious. So I will go. The next one I had was Nicholas Lidstrom. Nicholas Lidstrom. I always want to say Lindstrom. It's Lidstrom.
I have him too.
Okay. Well, we should have talked about this. No, I'm just kidding. We should have talked about this beforehand. All right, so we got three of the same. Nicholas Lidstrom.
Yeah, if this doesn't prove that there's no collusion here, nothing.
At least when we get to him, his card values, when we talk about his cards, they're not so astronomically high that you can't buy them. So that's one good thing. But I'll give the...
I'm going to be emotional in that part. So
Yeah.
Go ahead and let's go through his stats.
So a little tagline with Lidstrom. 1,564 games played, 20 seasons, 1,142 points, which puts him sixth all-time for D. I always look at points per game. It was about 0.73 points per game. The one stat I really liked, he was always among the top players in ice time per year. We just kind of talked about how Ray Bork played a lot of games and Lidstrom played a lot of minutes. Comparison, that was one thing I always brought up for Wild fans, trying to make Suter seem more relevant. They always brought up how he played 30 minutes but stood around a lot. No, I'm just kidding.
The marshmallow thrower.
But no, Lidstrom has the stats. 4-time Cup winner, obviously all with Detroit. He's Hall of Famer, 12-time All-Star, 7-time Norris winner, and a 3-time runner-up. 1-time Conn Smythe, playoff MVP, which he was the first, I think, European-produced Conn Smythe winner, which is cool. I'll keep going. If you need to jump in. I got Impact the City. It was number 5, is retired by Detroit. He was a captain for Detroit for 6 years. He's still with the Red Wings organization. He's their VP of hockey operations, and he moved up the ranks. He was a scout before then. So it's good to see that he's still involved, still with the Red Wings. Just overall, he was an offensive defenseman. It's something I keep coming back to. It's these guys that were offensive defensemen. They just kind of stand out. And a lot of with Nick Lidstrom, everyone, you talk to scouts, it's just hockey IQ is the term you hear. Now, what's that actually mean? Hockey IQ, see the ice. If you think hockey IQ, I think of Gretzky is how I equate it. Where
sure.
He could see where players were going before they got there and could get them the puck. So I'll let you chime in if you have anything else on his byline.
Just a couple other quick things that I do think are interesting. So in his 20-year career with the Red Wings, his team never missed the playoffs.
Wow.
And in fact, Lidstrom is, I believe, looking at my notes here, he has 263 playoff games played, which is second all-time to Chris Chelios.
Wow. And Chelios played, was he about 22 years too? 25? I can't remember exactly.
For 47 teams.
Yeah, I did research him too, but he when I started looking at him, he fell off my list. But
okay, now you're gonna have to keep me on the edge of the cliff here, Troy.
So values. I want to hear it. Yeah. I want to hear it.
So his most well-known rookie is 1991 OPC Premier, PSA 10, last sold July 31st for. Are you ready?
Let's hear
it. $48.
I give up. What's the pop on it?
Guess.
600.
225.
Jeez, I was. So I know the PSA 10, the pop's 857 on his Young Guns, his 91 Young Guns. So I knew it had to be less than that.
How is that possible?
I don't. That's
what world are we living in right now?
It's that I don't know if it's the truth, but we've talked about that junk wax bias where you talked about it on Coach Co's podcast where these junk wax era hockey cards get lumped in, we think, to all that, where it's like they think they was overproduced and they're not. Look at that, 600. What was it? No, 200 and some
$225.
That's
it isn't a pro jersey too. Like a lot of these early '90s rookies, especially the Upper Deck ones, are the World Juniors.
Yep.
And so there you can kind of, I get that aspect of it, but this is a defenseman that we're putting on the Mount Rushmore. His rookie card is 31 years old. There's 225 of them. And this is not an anomaly because I'll tell you, we'll see by the time this airs. I just put an offer in on one, full disclosure. The last sales were $48, $57, and $54.
Wow.
So it's not like it's some crazy anomaly. it makes... I was like, after doing the research, I'm like, I have to buy this card.
Yeah. Well, it's like, we've been doing this. I think a project of mine is going to make my own little Mount Rushmores, like your Instagram posts, but actually have the actual card now. That probably won't happen with some of them. Don't get me wrong. I don't think I can get the Gordie Howe rookie or anything, but I thought that'd be a cool little side project to try to work on.
So that's sad and pathetic. And on behalf of the hockey card universe, Nicholas, I apologize to you, but your card is worth nothing. So, yeah.
All right.
Maybe that'll change. I do think that the collecting world will kind of get past that bias. And to me, I think you hit the nail on the head, Troy. That's the only thing it can be is, he played not so long ago and for one of the biggest markets, an original 6 team, that it just has to be that bias. But all right, am I next?
You're next. So we've agreed on the first 3. Can we have a disagreement? Can we not have the same one?
I'm sure we will. So my last one is Paul Coffey.
All right, we disagree. I have Larry Robinson.
Nice. Okay,
here's my problem. So we're going to debate, and I researched these guys. I deleted all my notes from the guys I didn't.
You said that. No. You said that last time.
I know.
It's an invalid argument. Well, then you're just not learning.
All right, you go.
Okay, but I do want to make a point, though, that in retrospect, after last week when we were debating should we keep Mike Bossy or Guy Lafleur, it's not exactly an absolute between 2 players. So, for instance, we could keep whoever you nominated. I already forgot because I think I'm going to win. And... get rid of Ray Bork or Lidstrom or something like that, right? So we just got to, between our, what is it, would be 5 candidates, we got to come up with 4 people, whoever they may be. Okay, so here's why I nominated Paul Coffey. He's known for blazing fast speed and scoring ability. Played for 9 teams over 25 seasons, which I guess could be a little bit of a minus, but it did play in 1,409 games. Second in career points for a defenseman. Had 1,531 career points, 396 goals, 1,139 assists. He does own the record, Troy, for most goals by a defenseman in the regular season and playoff combined with 455. So if you combine regular season and playoffs, no defenseman has scored more goals than Paul Coffey. And I'm just going to put a bow on that to me, that was one of the big factors in comparing him to some of the other people I was looking at. He also holds the single season record for most goals by a defenseman with 48, which he did in 1985. 8 times in his 25-year career, so a third of his career, he led defensemen in scoring. At 1.087 points per game, he is the highest scoring average ever with a minimum for a defenseman with a minimum of 750 games. He has the most career playoff goals by a defenseman with 59. He's a 4-time Stanley Cup champion. He won 3 with Montreal and 1 with Pittsburgh. 3-time Norris Trophy winner.
Edmonton, right? Not Montreal, right?
Oh, yeah, Edmonton. I'm sorry.
Okay.
Yeah, I had a typo. So 3-time Norris winner, 14-time All-Star. Real briefly on his 1981 OPG rookie card, PSA 10, population 24, tiny. last sold for $4,767 in June of this year. It had actually reached its all-time high this past December, so not 2021. Well, at the end of 2021 for 8,500. So it's again a little less than half its all-time high. And just purely from a hockey card perspective, given his resume, the fact that he won 4 cups, his most goals ever by defenseman, to get that rookie card population 24 for under $5,000 is a steal. All right, let's hear your case.
Okay, very compelling case for Paul Coffey. A lot of really good stats. Obviously, my guy from the stats perspective might not have it, but I will go into some stuff and we can talk. So I nominated Larry Robinson. He, obviously Montreal Canadiens, played 20 years, 1,384 goals. Different era back then. Not as offensive defense. He wasn't Bobby Orr. 208 goals, 750 assists, 958 total points, which puts him 9th all-time for D. 0.69 points per game. Here's where I brought my plus-minus. He is the number 1 all-time plus-minus player at 722. So Bobby Orr, was plus 500. Larry Robinson's plus 722. Product of probably the team, but product of how he played as well. He is a 6-time Cup winner as a player with Montreal, but he's on the Cup 10 times. So he won it 6 times as a player, 3 times as a coach, and 1 time as a scout. He is obviously Hall of Fame, 2-time Norris, 6-time All-Star, 1-time Conn Smythe, named to the 100 greatest NHL players. His team had 20 consecutive playoff appearances for playing with Montreal. His 19 is retired by Montreal, which I think says a lot. If you can get your number retired
big deal.
by Montreal, you should feel really proud of that accomplishment. Obviously, he's the backbone of the 6-time Cup championship team. And now here's where this is going to be a little personal bias probably with Larry Robinson, and even what brought me to even research him in depth as I did.
Wait. Do we have an emotional story coming?
It's kind of emotional. It's not emotional.
Oh.
You think about it. When I talk about relevance into the game, I actually I got to go to the NHL Coaches Association Development Conference this year. And it's basically 4 days of you get to talk to NHL coaches. This one was all on Zoom, but I got to sit in on a panel with Scotty Bowman, Larry Robinson, and Dave King. So you have 3 all-time greats. And the amount of times Larry Robinson, he is so in tune with the game today that listening to him talk about how you compare and contrast styles and how stuff he did, they kind of see in today's game, but how they've taken the game to the next level. But then also listening to him talk about mental health, I was blown away. He spent 20 minutes talking about mental health of players and how the whole culture needs to change. And what are we seeing? We brought it up at the very beginning. We saw the story break with Michigan today with their head coach. Again, it's all being reported. Who knows? I don't know what the whole story is. But then we have Hockey Canada, all that stuff going on. So it was really just seeing how he's still in tune with the game at his age. And actually, they all were. Scotty Bowman and Dave King, I would have never expected to hear them talking like they did. You think of these old guys as just, toughen up and, you get punched in the head, you take it. But it was really cool to hear him. I know this doesn't sway you to say he's on Mount Rushmore, but I think there's a little piece of me loves that he's still in tune to the game and has seen a shift and has kind of adapted to the shift. He's also, I like that he was a head coach for a couple of years with the Devils and the Kings, and he was the first interim head coach that led a team to a Stanley Cup with the Devils. He's just a big defense, a big dude that was highly mobile. Wasn't as offensive as Bobby Orr, but he definitely had an offensive aspect to his game. And his card values, I didn't go super in depth. I didn't even look at the PSA 9 or 10 because they were so stinking low. But there's a 1973 OPG PSA 8. His pop count is 239, and that's $350.
Cheap.
Yeah, super cheap for what he was. So,
well, if we were talking about the Mount Rushmore of hockey talk, that would have been a fantastic argument. No, I'm kidding. Obviously very good. Okay, so once again, we're at a stalemate. Now, like I said a minute ago, going back to maybe mistakes made in the past, do we feel that either Coffee or Larry Robinson would it be a candidate to replace Lidstrom, Bork, or Orr? Or does it come down to those two?
I'll say this. I do not think Larry Robinson replaces Bobby Orr or Lidstrom. God, I always want to put that N in there. I think those two are staying. Bork, to me,
can't replace Ray Bork.
Yeah, no, I'm saying Bork stays too. I was looking at my list going down. I mean, I'm going to sit here and, like, with Larry Robinson, I can't back up any of his stuff with the stats because obviously Paul Coffey is going to have way more. You know, I could
well,
try
the 6-time Cup thing. I think that's relevant.
and 10 times, like, total, if you count.
Well, but this is as a player.
Mount Rush. We never said that. Mount Rushmore of defense.
Well, then Scotty Bowman would be on that mount. I don't know.
I just think, being with Montreal, I think has some sway.
Did he win how many times did he win the Norris?
He won the Norris 2 times.
Okay, Coffey won 3.
Yep. 20 consecutive playoff appearances. I mean, if we're gonna, Coffey definitely has almost every statistical category. This maybe is my, I don't know. I got the emotional pick for Larry Robinson, but I can't give you a compelling argument why Larry Robinson is better than Paul Coffey, or why he deserves it more.
We do have to make a decision, though.
Yeah.
I don't know. I relented on Guy Lafleur. Guy. It was sad because I didn't want to.
Yeah. I mean, the only thing, 9 teams, I guess, that to me isn't that big of a negative. I mean, I don't care if you played for 9 teams, you played 25 years. I wrote down, like, the stats you were kind of telling me and just.
Yeah, well, let me go through them again because I think this is the crux of the issue, okay? So he had 455 goals combined between regular season and playoffs, which to me is more significant than just regular season. And he's the most goals ever for a defenseman. He holds the single season record for most goals by a defenseman of 48. 8 times he led defensemen in scoring. And to me, this is the one that I just keep staring at. His 1.087 points per game is the highest ever average with a minimum of 750 games. It's like, how do you leave him off the list?
Yeah, I get you. The only thing, does this hurt Paul Coffey? Was he? I don't think of him as, like, very, very physical. But it's not like I watch Paul Coffey a lot.
Well, I think he was for speed and scoring ability. So speed was his deal, not necessarily physicality.
But he didn't have a sweet mustache, and we know how important mustaches are.
Yeah, it's true.
And sweet hair.
Big.
Dang it! I'm sorry, Montreal listeners. We need a Canadian on this list, but I think the argument for Coffey is becoming a little too compelling. Even though Larry Robinson was an absolute stud, he's looking more like he's in the visitor center and looking up right now.
So on our Mount Rushmore, we have Orr, Bork, Lidstrom, Paul Coffey. And we'll take the rest of the debate from here to social media. Does that sound good?
Yeah, I want to hear what the people say. And did we miss someone? Like, is there someone that you?
Well, there's Phil Housley, and there's
no, I get that, but, like, do you have a compelling argument why someone that we didn't list should be on Mount Rushmore? I mean, Phil Housley's from St. Paul, so he should be on every list. But I guess
I know we failed.
We failed Minnesota.
Okay, so I have one last question about this. Now, listen, nobody was going to put Cale Makar, he's like baby just out of diapers, pretty much, on the Mount Rushmore of defensemen. So I get that.
Yeah.
But at what point, let's say he continues to play like he's played the last couple of years, at what point would you consider him replacing so it would probably be Paul Coffey in this place? What would he need to do? How long would he need to play?
I think he has to keep playing at the same high level that he is playing, probably 7 to 10 years total. So what he's had now plus whatever 6 or 5 to 6.
And I think with the expectation he would go beyond that.
Yeah, because looking at our previous, it's like that 10 year is almost the cutoff, right? Like those guys that have short careers, you better have a really exceptional span. I don't think you can have 3 really great years and be considered. It seems like it's getting into the 8, 9, 10 years. If you can sustain it, because being an NHL hockey player is not easy. It takes a toll on your body to keep that up at a high level for that long. I think then you start entering conversations. And if he still plays like how he is and gets better, because God, he's so young, but then he definitely enters that conversation.
Okay, I agree. I just feel like I had to ask because somebody would bring it up. But all right, that is our Mount Rushmore of defensemen. Now it's time for new releases. And Troy, I think there's actually a new release coming.
We might have a new release. We might have.
This has been the segment of regurgitation for about the past month, but we do have some signs that's coming. So in case you haven't seen, I know a lot of you probably already have, but the Black Diamond checklist was just released. And as we've talked about in previous episodes, this is a clear indication that a release is imminent. I want to make the clarification again that this would be for the 2021-2022 product. So as we know, Upper Deck has been alternating, trying to get through their backlog, and some releases are like 2020, some have been 2021, and believe it or not, we're going to have next season's releases coming out very soon as well. So it's the Caulfield, Zegras, Sider, Raymond, Byfield group, etc. August 10th, as of right now, it looks like it's pretty solid that is the release date for Black Diamond. We do have a design preview that we published 4 or 5 days ago now on our Instagram. So feel free to check out our profile if you want to see what the cards will look like this year. I think they're pretty attractive. They look good. As far as pre-sale pricing goes, what we're seeing on like David Adams and Steel City is around $350 for a hobby box. I did, for our Canadian friends, look at Cloud Sanchara, and they said that because of allocation, they weren't doing pre-sales, so I couldn't find a price there. It does. I did make a note, though, if there's any other sites in Canada that we should be looking at that are, again, like Cloud Sanchara or equivalent to the U.S. sites like David Adams or Blowout or Steel City, please message us so we can check those regularly as we're trying to relay information like this. Beyond that, a hobby box is a 1-pack box that is 6 cards per pack. So very much, Troy, a high-risk, high-reward product. One thing that's significant about Black Diamond is it's really the first, what I would call maybe like premium or higher level product for the 2021-22 rookie class. So everything to this point for Caulfield and Zegras and Sider et al. Has been a little bit on the more entry side or lower end. So if you really want a valuable rookie, this would be the time to get it. I do have a couple notes on the checklist. So in Black Diamond, they break their rookies into what they call rookie gems. So each card would have between 1 and 4 gems associated with it. The better the rookie, the more gems. So in the 62 rookies, there's single, double, triple, and quad. In single, there are a little bit of familiar names, but nobody really super notable. In double, you do get a couple of the bigger rookie names, like an Anton Lundell, Kalen Addison, Cam York, Cole Sillinger, Dawson Mercer, Jeremy Swayman, Jamie Drysdale, and Alex Newhook, etc. Where it starts to get really interesting is in the triple, and this is where, if everyone noted in our top 50 prospects under 23, so in triple, we have Cole Perfetti, who was on that list number 8, Mason McTavish, who was number 13, Moritz Seider, Lucas Raymond, Spencer Knight, Trevor Zegras, and, drumroll, William Eklund.
Interesting.
So that is really interesting to me, because for Upper Deck to kind of give him a more prominent card than Lundell or Sillinger, Mercer, Newhook, Swayman, one of the biggest rookies out of Series 1, to me is a really interesting choice. And I think even the quad is interesting as there's 2 players. There's Cole Caulfield, which isn't a surprise, and then there's Quentin Byfield. And not that Byfield, again, he was number 15 on the top 50 prospect list, but also the fact that they would, again, kind of slot him ahead of Sider and Raymond and Trevor Zegras. To me, I don't know what the word is, interesting.
Yeah, it is interesting. I would love to be a fly on the wall in that meeting where that was determined.
And I haven't really looked into, Troy, like how the values difference between if you have the single gem or the quad, but that'll be something fun to follow as the set gets released and we start to see some of these pop up on the secondary market. Beyond that, the only other note that I'll make is there are 36 rookie autos, and they basically include all the big names. Yeah. So the checklist is really big, though. So if you look at all the different card variations, and you can see it on Cardboard Connection or other sites. So again, going back to $350, you get 6 cards essentially. It seems really, really high risk. It's a less cards in stature for what, almost double the price.
Yeah, it's this is definitely one I will be buying singles of the ones I want. I don't think a box is in my future unless they fall pretty drastically.
So we'll track the sales, we'll track the resale and value market, but it is kind of fun to have another release that looks like it's imminent. And of course, if anything changes where August 10th doesn't happen, we'll be sure to let everyone know. The only other quick note on new releases is, so today, by today I'm meaning the day of the podcast is released, so August 3rd, the 2021-22 Upper Deck AHL set releases. Doesn't really interest me a lot. I don't think it's much interest to you, Troy.
No.
But if you are into like minor league or prospect cards or looking for new up-and-comers, you can, might be something that you want to check into. Again, the checklist is already on Cardboard Connection. From a pre-sales perspective, it's going to Hobby Box about $50 in the U.S., about $70 in Canada. Got that, again, from the Clouts and Charo website. Hobby boxes include 12 rookies, 1 auto, 1 parallel. And then it does look that beyond Black Diamond, it's still showing Clear Cut would be the next release. That would be a 2020 product. And as of right now, probably the holding date would be, again, the best way to put it. Looks to be the end of August. So we could still have 2 big releases in the month of August.
Yeah, and just kind of reading between the tea leaves of our interview with Upper Deck, I don't know, he kind of hinted that there's going to be some releases coming out pretty short order from each other. So, if it's that 3 to 4 week to a month, I bet we'll see another release after Black Diamond.
All right, that's it on new releases. Now is our favorite time of the show, where we reveal, review, maybe make fun of each other. I don't know, our personal pickups. So, Troy, as always, we start with you.
Yeah, nothing big for me. I basically...
What happened to you?
I don't know. Like, I got busy.
Do we need an intervention?
Life got in the way. Life's got in the way. I've been watching breaks, so I've bought into a couple breaks here and there, which, is just great entertainment. You get some cards. So I've done that. Nothing. I've not hit the Laffy or the Kirill Future Watch Auto. So disappointment there, I guess. But no, it's been underwhelming last 2 weeks, and I think I need to step up my game. So I'll be working on that. I'll be working on that now that we're in off season's buying season. We've done all this analysis and start to look at some.
You're
of those
not buying
cards.
Anything. Your own advice, Troy.
I know.
I did have 4 pickups in the past week. All goalies. It's kind of interesting. That wasn't on purpose, but so the first card I bought was a 2020 SPX Ilya Sorokin Black Lustrous Rookies Auto to $9.99. Real cool looking card, black card with a silver auto. Got it for $32, I think. So really good price there. Actually bought 2 other Sorokin rookie cards. A 2020 Purple Reflections out of 300. I think that came out of Extended, right? Got it for almost nothing, $550. And a 2020 Platinum or OPC Platinum Sorokin Rainbow Color Wheel for $5. Hoping that he plays well and Islanders are a little bit better, might be able to keep or flip some of those. And then with going by our theme, right, buy the dip, off season's buying season, I bought a Swayman Series 1 Young Gun for $16, where if you go back to 3-4 months ago, that seems like a steal. And I do have a number of them already, but so I'll probably flip a few of them as the season starts.
Yeah, I remember I sold one of mine, I think, for $80, probably 5 months ago.
Crazy. All right, guys, that is the show for the week. Once again, thank you to everyone that is listening, supporting, communicating with us, engaging with us on social media. We appreciate you from the bottom of our heart, and we're only beginning. The best is yet to come. So it should be a fun journey together as we help try to do our little part to grow the hockey card collecting world. If you're not following us already on Instagram, follow us at hockey_cards_Gongshow. You can follow us at the same username on TikTok. Find us on Facebook or Twitter. Hope you all have an amazing week, and we'll talk to you next week.